The lights are fading. You're thinking the show's starting. I should have gone for a piss. Well, it's too late. The show has already started. So without further ado, would you please welcome to the stage a man who you may have seen at the British Comedy Awards 2012, winning Sod All. A man who has been in 2 films, neither of which have ever been released. And a man, although he's the only person playing the Harrogate Theatre this evening, got given dressing room 2. Yes, please welcome a man who's too tight to employ a support act. A man who himself should probably have gone for a piss before the show started. Here he is, a man who has to do his own off-stage announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andy Parsons. Oh, yes, very exciting. Very, very exciting, ladies and gentlemen, here at Harrogate Theatre. Yes, 7 people are as excited as I am. One of the finest theatres opposite a Marks and Spencer's. Very close to an Argos and a Primark that any man could hope to play. And you, the good people of Harrogate, apparently, you drink to more hazardous levels and watch more porn than anywhere else in the UK. And you like to clap yourselves. So we thought, given those 2 facts, we thought it would be a perfect place to film the DVD. Yes. Obviously, you may come across, during tonight's performance, the resident ghost, which is apparently called Alice, often manifests herself as a smell in the corridor. So if you do have a little bit of wind, save it till the interval. You should be in the clear. And of course, Harrogate, home to the stray, as I found out. Somebody said to me, they said, oh, you know, this stray, and I was thinking, well, I assumed they were talking about a cat, right? Not some park. They said, do you want to kick about on the stray? I said, well, I don't like cats, but that seems a bit strong. But I hope we have some fun tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, some audiences can be very lively. Just need to calm those down slightly. Other audiences can be a little bit quiet. Obviously, with those, you know, you need to liven them up a bit. But you don't want to tell them they're quiet, because then they tend to go even quieter. And obviously I know 1 or 2 of you want to know what the plan for this evening is. Now, obviously probably a few OCD members, okay? So the plan at this early stage is to go for about 50 minutes, right? Is that him, is it, madam? You're just pointing him out there, that's the one? He wants to know what's happening. Here we go, sir, this is for you. The plan is to go for about 50 minutes, then we'll have that interval, right? Then we'll go for about another 50 minutes afterwards. So there should be plenty of time for you to nip down the pub afterwards, if that's what you require. Or maybe sneak home, have a quick threesome with the babysitter. Oh, that's got a mixed response, hasn't it? I don't know if the mother-in-law is babysitting this evening. But relax, I'm not expecting too much. I realise we live in difficult economic times. Obviously, people still blaming the banks, and for very, very good reason. But let's face it, even before the banking crisis, we didn't really like banks that much, because we don't tend to have very positive relationships with our banks. As an example, I was recently trying to pay a tax bill online. Yeah, because some comedians do pay their taxes. Let me tell you, that would have got nothing in Greece, ladies and gentlemen. So I was trying to pay this tax bill, right, and there was a problem. So it said I needed to phone up my bank. So I phone up my bank, right, it's one of those where you've got an automated system where you have to put in a couple of digits of your passcode. So I put in 2 digits of my passcode, hoping to get through to the advisor, but oh no. It's options, then further options, then further options, then more options. And finally, I get through to an advisor, and the first thing she says is, please, could you put in 2 digits of your passcode? So now, when I phone up the bank and it asks me initially to put in 2 digits of my passcode, I get them wrong. Because get this, then you get straight through to an advisor. So this advisor, she says to me, Mr. Parsons, she says, I can see exactly what the problem is. She says, you are trying to pay by debit card. Mr. Parsons, I need to tell you, when you pay by debit card, we have limits in place to prevent fraud. And I said, well, you know it's not fraud, don't you? Because we've obviously spent the last 5 minutes verifying I am who I say I am. And what is more, you obviously don't think it's fraud, do you? Because you keep referring to me as Mr. Parsons. And what is more, in the whole history of crime, has anybody tried to defraud anybody else by paying their frickin' tax bill for them? She said, Mr. Parsons, if you insist on paying by debit card, it should be fine. You will just need to pay in a series of instalments. So I said, so you're quite happy to be defrauded just over a number of days? She said, I'm not authorised to answer that. I can merely repeat we have limits in place to prevent fraud. I said, look, you know it's not fraud, don't you? Not only have I answered all the questions you've got in front of you, I can throw you some bonus questions as well. Not only do I know my mother's maiden name, I know my grandmother's maiden name and all my freaking cousins as well. Well, she said, Mr. Parsons, I should warn you, we record these telephone conversations for training purposes. I said, well, I don't think they'll be using this one. Because if they do, they'll learn sod all. Well, at this point, she said, I think I may have to get my supervisor to give you a call back. So lo and behold, 5 minutes later, I get a call back from the supervisor. Hello, is that Mr. Parsons? Yes, it is Mr. Parsons. Hello, it's the bank supervisor here. I just need to ask you a couple of security questions. I said, but you phoned me up. Surely I'm the one who should be asking the questions. Surely you've got some quite good security answers about me already, given that you phoned my home phone number and I am specifically waiting for your call. Of course, there's a very good chance I am, in fact, a burglar who's just picked up the phone on the off chance that there might be a bank on the other end of the line being a bit loose with some account details. He said, Mr. Parsons, what I'm going to do, he said, is I'm going to put you through to our fraud team. They will clear your card, put you back to me, and we'll be able to proceed. I said, but how will I know it's the fraud team? Why don't you put yourself through to the fraud team? You clear my debit card, get back to me. I've still got some burgling to do. He said, Mr. Parsons, before I put you through, is there anything else I can help you with? I said, given your record so far, that seems unlikely. But please keep talking. I think I might be able to get a routine out of this. To which he replied, I think I recognise your voice. Are you that comedian bloke? To which I said, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not authorised to answer that. But now we know, don't we? Now we know. Whenever we're watching Deal or No Deal and Noel Edmonds phones up the banker, we know there's no banker on the end of that line, because if there was, Noel would be spending half the show giving him security details. And we get cross, don't we? We get cross because there's all these levels of security for us, the customer, but when it comes to their investment bankers, as we now know, there are very few levels of security. And the government has suggested they might want to split up the investment and retail sides of banking. And you're thinking, well, the banks don't seem that keen, but the government should insist, shouldn't they? Yeah, because let's face it, retail banking would still make a nice profit. This is the side of banking that charges us a tenner to send us a letter. And it's not a nice, newsy, chatty letter, is it? We wouldn't mind paying a bit of money for. All it normally says is, you're overdrawn. Well, we knew that, didn't we? Because we couldn't get any money out of the freaking cash point. Charging us a tenner for the letter is not helping our debt problem. Be like turning up at Weight Watchers and them going, oi, you're fat, you are, before giving you a cake. So what choice do we have? Well, If you don't want to use banks, there is a new player on the market, isn't there? Wonga.com. I've checked out their current interest rate for you, 5,853%. And people still take them up on it, don't they? You know, I don't know quite how it works. People go online, they go, here we go, let's have a look at this. Yeah, oh, Wonga.com, there we go. 5,853%. That seems about right, doesn't it? And you're thinking, well, why do people do it? Well, presumably because the banks won't lend to them. They have to do it. But you're thinking, why won't the banks lend to people? Surely that is the job of the bank, is to lend to people. Oh, I'm a prostitute, but I don't shag. I sell pet insurance and breakdown cover. More on this later. Because I realise I can get easily frustrated. I'm guessing most of you have never been troubled by Kendal mint cake. Sadly, I have. For those of you unaware of what Kendal mint cake is, it is not a mint and it is not a cake. It is a cross between mouthwash and soap. You can get them in camping shops, and if you're going on an expedition, they suggest you put a couple of bars in your rucksack, they say. They say it is good in emergencies. Now, as far as I can work out, the only reason it is good in emergencies, it's the only thing guaranteed not to have been eaten by the time an emergency comes around. If you'd had a Mars bar in your rucksack, you might have got to 11 o'clock on the first morning. You might have thought, I'm having that. With Kendal mint cake, you could have not eaten for 6 days, had a pint of beer and a spliff, and you'd still get it out of your pocket and you go, I don't mean it's quite reached that stage yet. As part of the hype for Kendal mint cake, they are utilising a quote from Sir Edmund Hillary when he climbed Everest. The quote is, "We were sat on the snow, looking down at the country below us, and we nibbled Kendal mint cake." Now, he's on top of Everest, right? Average temperature minus 60 degrees. Yeah, he's using up something like 10,000 calories a day, and he could only nibble Kendal mint cake. That is how shit it is. But these mountaineers, they're crazy people, aren't they? They go things like, oh, I am going to climb every peak over 8,000 metres. Well, why are you going to do that? Because it's there. Well, why don't you just imagine it's not there? Ooh, I'm going to climb every peak over 9,000 metres. Ooh, there's none of them. I'll be able to stay at home and have a cup of tea. Because I had a taste of it last year, right? They sent me off to Siberia for a documentary, right? Coldest inhabited place on Earth, minus 53 degrees, right? And we're in a tent. Yeah, and they said, if you go outside for a piss during the night, they said, make sure you shake it around a bit, they said, because it's cold enough to freeze the urine back onto your penis. Oh yeah, that was a quick piss. Nothing frightens a man more than being told he might get frostbite to the penis. I was thinking one advantage of still having a foreskin was I probably had a little bit I could afford to lose. But of course now, aren't we? All the proper mountaineers, they're attracting all the amateur nutters. You know, people like Ben Fogle. Ben bloody Fogle. Do you know what his latest stunt's going to be? He's going to try and swim the Atlantic, he says. Yeah, reckons it's going to take him 4 months to swim the Atlantic, but he says it may take him a little bit longer because he's not a very strong swimmer. Over the 2,000-mile journey, he is worried, he says, that possibly he may be attacked by sharks. So what he's going to do, he is going to strap a magnet to his ankle because he's hoping the electric field that it creates will somehow put them off. And I'm thinking, if I thought there was a chance of a shark coming anywhere near me, not only would I have a magnet on one ankle, I'd have it on the other ankle and both wrists as well. What you don't want is a magnet on your right ankle, see a shark pop up by your left ankle and bite the bloody thing off. But you're thinking, right, sharks swim at 30 miles an hour. Even if they get within a few yards and feel a bit woozy, Aren't they going to think, sod it, I've come this far? What he wants to strap on his ankle, bit of Kendal mint cake? Job done, isn't it? And obviously, let's face it, people get frustrated with me. I'm accident prone. Yeah. I recently almost got run over by a bus, which was definitely careless because I was actually on the bus at the time. It was one of those route master buses, you can come off the back, right? And it was going really, really slowly past exactly where I wanted to go. I thought this is too good an opportunity to miss. Now, with hindsight, maybe it wasn't going quite as slowly as I thought it was. Either that or just as I was about to jump off, the old bus driver could see me in his rear view mirror. He thought, all right, I'm going to fuck him up. Also, with hindsight, right, if I ever jump off a bus again, I will jump off in the direction the bus is travelling and run alongside for a little bit until the momentum of the bus has worn off. As it was, I jumped off the back. For a split second, I thought I'd been pretty cool, and a split second later, I was going arse over tit in front of an entire bus queue who thought it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. And you can imagine, you've just cartwheeled on the road, right? You've gone back. You've hurt yourself quite badly. Your watch has come off. You're rolling around, right? You put your watch back on. They'll never notice on the DVD. And there I was, right, lying in the road, and I look up. Nothing is more distressing, let me tell you, when you've just cartwheeled on the road to see an entire bus queue absolutely pissing themselves. And if that wasn't enough, suddenly there was a screech of tyres, and I looked round, right, and a car had pulled up, right? It was a taxi. And I thought, oh, they've seen me fall off the bus, he's going to help me. Oh, no. Typical London. Boop, boop. I thought, oh, my God, what am I going to do? I thought, I'm going to have to front this out, right? So I struggled to my feet, yeah? I bowed to the bus queue. I bowed to the taxi driver. And then I went round the corner and had a little cry. I thought I'd better take myself off to the doctor, I thought. So she agreed to see me, right? She said, you'll be fine. She said, I think. She said, you'll be able to move around your stage, which is nice, isn't it? Nice to have a stage to yourself, isn't it? You can do what you like, can't you? It's nice. I like that. I like that aspect to it. It's brilliant, isn't it? You can just wander off for no reason, can't you? And then you think, oh, look, I've got loads of different entrances and exits. Maybe it'd be fun to come back on here instead. Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Alternatively, right, you can just say, wander off here, right? And then you think, oh, I'll just wiggle my foot about. There we go. So, and you think, oh, look, let's see what else we can see on here. Oh, look, there's an iron. Let's have a little wiggle of the iron. What else have we got? Here we go. Well, how about foot and iron? Maybe iron and foot. And then we can come back on here. It's brilliant, isn't it? Brilliant. Yeah. Oh, Darren Brown, eat your heart out, ladies and gentlemen. He may be one of the world's greatest illusionists, but he still can't spell Darren, can he? So the doctor, she says to me, look, I think you're going to be fine, but you've not had a checkup for a very long time. We need to give you a checkup. So I said, OK. So she weighed me, then she took my height, then she calculated my body mass index. She said, I need to tell you, you are in fact overweight. I said, are you sure I'm not under height? She said, no. I said, in which case I need to pick you up on your methodology, I said. Because when you weighed me, I had my shoes on. When you took my height, you made me take the shoes off. So after a heated 5-minute discussion, we weighed my shoes, and we came to the conclusion I was in fact at the high end of normal. Heavy shoes. She then said, I need to take your blood pressure. She took my blood pressure, said, you've got high blood pressure. I said, I'm not surprised. I've just falsely been accused of being overweight. She said, I also need to tell you that you've got high cholesterol. She said one of the contributory factors of this is the fact that you're a man. I said, well, there's very little I can do about that. I could snip off my knob, which would have the added advantage I might lose a bit more weight, but not much. She goes, you also need to know that you've got an underactive thyroid. She said, one of the symptoms of this is lifeless hair. I said, I think I may have had this for a while. She then goes, have you ever been depressed? I said, not until I came in here. Could you try and look after yourself, don't you? You know, you try and eat healthily. You think, oh yeah, I'll have a bit of broccoli, some grapefruit, some cherries, a bit of salmon. And then you see a list of all of those things that supposedly can increase your chances of getting cancer. And on there, broccoli, grapefruit, cherries and salmon. Apparently, even constipation can increase your chances of getting cancer. I mean, it's bad enough being stuck on the bloody loo trying to squeeze one out without thinking, bloody hell, I've given myself cancer as well. Even flip-flops can supposedly increase your chances of getting cancer. Who knew that? They should be up there on the top shelf in brown packaging with a little warning on them. Yeah, flip-flop wearers die younger. Crocs kill. Jesus sandals just say no. Even crisps supposedly can give you cancer. Yeah. Yeah, so are we now going to have people breathing cheese and onion on other people? And those people worry that they've contracted cancer through passive eating? Yeah. Are they going to ban crisps from public places so there'll be people huddled round office doorways with crisps all over the place, having a sneaky twiglet? Will people be wearing little smoky bacon patches? There is a plus side though, because apparently masturbation helps prevent cancer. Oh yes, that's a handy excuse, isn't it? I'm just getting carcinogens out of my prostate. But you're a woman. Well, you can't be too careful. And you'd have thought, wouldn't you? Fried food would be bad for you. You'd think pizza would be bad for you. Beer would be bad for you. Chocolate would be bad for you. But apparently, they are things that can all help prevent cancer. So if you want to be healthy, feel free to have an all-day breakfast followed by Black Forest Gatto, washed down with some beer. But make sure you take those cherries off the Black Forest Gatto. They're a bloody menace. Even curry supposedly can be good for you because it helps prevent cancer. Something to do with the spice turmeric and the fact that you're probably less likely to be constipated. So she says, Andy, she says, I need you to be honest with me. She said, one of the reasons we don't have as good a health outcomes in Britain as the rest of Europe, she said, is because we're too reserved in Britain. We don't talk about our problems enough. And I was thinking British people can be reserved at times, but at other times, they'll quite happily tell you absolutely everything. You give some British people a mobile phone, stick them on a train carriage, they'll quite happily tell the entire carriage their life story, won't they? I'm on one recently, a woman couldn't give a shit that the entire carriage was listening in. Yeah, I can hear you, yeah, no, still shagging Trevor, yeah, shagging Trevor, yeah, oh yeah, no, still shagging Michael as well, yeah, no, Trevor doesn't know about Michael, no, in fact, I've got to go now, I'm meeting Trevor at the next stop, yeah, all right, bye. I was tempted to get off and go and meet Trevor myself. Hello, Trevor. I've heard a lot about you from Helen here, you old devil. Of course, what you don't know, she's also shagging Michael as well. I thought you ought to know because every other bastard does. So the doctor, she said to me, she said, how many units of alcohol have you had this week? So I said, 21. She said, that's not bad. The maximum is 28. I was thinking it was bloody lucky I saw her on the Monday. So then she asked me how much caffeine I drank, right? Piers, not only do I drink too much alcohol, I also drink too much not alcohol. She said I should be drinking 8 glasses of water a day. But apparently, if you drink those 8 glasses of water a day, right, consecutively, straight away, one after the other, she said it can kill you. Who knew that? Because we think, don't we, if we go out with a friend and they're drinking water, we think, boring bastard. Oh no, they're crazy bloody risk takers, they are. So on the strength of the answer that I just gave her, right, she then wanted to know how much I was sleeping. Oh, and it wasn't enough for her. You're thinking that's a tragedy, isn't it? You don't have to be good at anything to be good at sleeping. You just got to be able to do nothing. I can't even do that. Because some people are brilliant at sleeping, aren't they? Story only last week, who's brilliant at sleeping? Pilots and co-pilots in the cockpit at the same time. I mean, how does that happen? Who sees their co-pilot falling asleep and thinks, fuck me, there's a good idea? We often wonder why the captain only makes an announcement at the start and the end of the flight. Now we know, don't we? And you know, sometimes when you're asleep on the flight and then the actual plane touches down, you get a little jolt, don't you? And you wake up and it's a bit of a surprise. I should imagine if you're the pilot, it's an even bigger bloody surprise. So the doc, she says, now, how much exercise do you do a week? So I told her, of course, wasn't enough, was it? Wasn't happy with my sob story also. This is when I said, look, I did try. I was on a running treadmill, right? And I was going along and I thought I was doing really well, right? Quite pleased with myself, yeah? And then just gradually, right, as I was on this running treadmill, I felt to myself, oh no, I'm going backwards here. I need to turn this off, right? So I thought I'd lean forward, right? Of course, I turned it the wrong way, didn't I? Speeded the whole thing up, fired myself off the back. But as I fired myself off the back, I banged my chin so hard on the treadmill, right? That it fired me off into an upright position. So I thought, keep doing it, hopefully nobody will notice, you know. And of course, the honest truth, isn't it, is that I like being lazy. It's nice, isn't it? You know. Because if you ask a lot of comics, right, where their favourite place in the world is, a lot of them will say on stage. Now, I always think that's a little bit sad, yeah? Because I like being on stage, yeah, but it's not my favourite place in the world. My favourite place in the world is at the end of my garden doing sod all. Thinking of all those things I could be doing in a couple of days' time. Yeah? Because if you dream of something, it's always perfect. Whereas when you're doing it, there's always that little bit of chance, isn't there? That you might have in the back of your brain the thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be down the back of my garden doing fuck all? Yeah. Because I'm one of those people who struggle to complete anything, right? I bought myself a guitar. I learnt to play a chord. It hurt my fingers. I give it up. I learnt to ride a unicycle. Yeah, but there's no brakes on a unicycle, and I live on a hill. I tried fire breathing. I inhaled and then burped. If I'm absolutely honest, the only reason I got into stand-up comedy, right, was I loved the lifestyle. You didn't have to do anything during the day. You had to normally do about 20 minutes work in the evening, and they gave you free booze. And admittedly, occasionally you have to deal with an audience, but that's usually great fun. My favourite heckle ever, a woman shouted out, "Stop talking! I'll do a wee myself!" Well, I was thinking, right, what other jobs I quite fancy? I was thinking I quite fancy wind farmer. Oh, yeah. I think out of all the farmer jobs, that's got to be the best, isn't it? You know, 5 o'clock in the morning, cock crows, out of bed, check the wind's blowing. Yes, it is, brilliant, back to bed again. Alternatively, 5 o'clock in the morning, cock crows, out of bed, wind's not blowing. Nothing I can do about it, back to bed again. Oh, yeah. But if I have got things to do, right, I like to write a list. Oh, you think you've done something then, don't you? But even better than writing the list, crossing something off the list. You know you've done something then. You can have yourself a little treat then, can't you? Have a cup of tea. Yeah. But the secret, ladies and gentlemen, is to write, make tea on the list. Right, make tea on the list, make the tea, have the tea, cross it off the list. Yeah. Because we always like to think, don't we? We think, oh, technology, that saves us time. But usually technology is just a brilliant new way of wasting more time, yeah? Take your phone, right? Your phone now, you can check your emails, check your texts, check Facebook, check Twitter, right? Whichever one you check first, you think, I've not checked that for 5 minutes. You can check it all over again. You think you've done something, but in reality, you've done nothing. It is the equivalent of every 5 minutes going up and opening your front door to see if there's anybody there, and then having a little walk back again. Because we're thinking there's still things that need to be invented, aren't there? I personally am still waiting for a decent alarm clock. One that doesn't, in fact, alarm you, yeah? Maybe one that just nudges you awake, yeah? Maybe gives you a little cuddle, makes you a cup of tea, little tickle downstairs, phones up work, so you can't come in. That would be an alarm clock, wouldn't it? But if, like me, you are a fan of a late start, right? I have just had a shock to the system. Because I've just had a child, ladies and gentlemen, and let me tell you, as any parents in the audience will know, trying to do very little when you've had a kid is extremely difficult. And if you do succeed in doing very little when you have a child, sooner or later, they tend to take the child away from you. Which slightly goes against why you had a kid in the first place. Because our society can take a lot of things now, can't it? You know, they've got more relaxed about various things, drug use, divorce, but child neglect, that's still a social taboo, isn't it? Hey, you've got to love kids. Obviously not too much. That's another social taboo right there, isn't it? But even when it comes to that, I was thinking I'm not strictly moral, because there was that story, wasn't there? Maths teacher on the south coast, he ran away with one of his 15-year-old pupils over to France, and I was following that story. I thought, well, that's terrible. And then there was another story, 26-year-old female PE teacher shagging one of her 15-year-olds. And there was me thinking, well, where was she when I was at school? So you're pleased to hear I've had a good hard look at myself. Tried to work out why I was having this child, and I came to the conclusion it was probably selfish reasons. You know, I didn't want to wait so long that I couldn't, in fact, have a child, because you see these stories in the press now, don't you? People like age 70 having babies. You think, oh no, that's too old. You don't want to be a kid struggling to walk, suddenly realising that your parents are in exactly the same state. And there was, I'd admit, there was just a little bit of me that thought, wouldn't it be nice when I'm really, really old to have at least one person I know who can wipe my arse? Now, I realise it's not the most positive reason to have a child. But fair's fair, I'm wiping his arse now. In 40 years' time, he may have to wipe my arse, and my arse then much bigger than his arse now, therefore I win. I get the feeling one or two of you may be judging me at the moment, ladies. But let's face it, I could be a worse father, couldn't I? Because a lot of comedians, they just seem to use their kids very callously as sources of material. Now, I have far too many embarrassing stories about myself without shopping members of my family. I'm a dreamer, ladies and gentlemen. So maybe, right, let's say there's been a disaster on the news. Let's say there's been a plane crash, right? But only one person has survived. And I'll be watching that story and I'll be thinking, oh yeah, that one person would have been me. And I think, well, why do I think that? I'm not very strong, I've got no medical skills, no survival knowledge, I'm not very good in a crisis. I'm weak-willed, I have a tendency to panic, and my one and only true ability is my ability to fantasise how good I would be in situations I've never found myself in. As an example of my ability to deal with a crisis, I recently went parachuting. Now, for those of you who've been parachuting will know, they tell you, when you jump out that plane, shout 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. I jumped out that plane, I shouted fuck all the way down. I had some friends on the ground, right? I said to them after, I said, could you tell which one was me? They said, we could hear you from about halfway down. And if I'm honest, I don't really know why I went parachuting, because I don't have a very good head for heights. You know, if I get like a hotel room and it's like above about the 5th floor, certainly if there's a balcony, I'm in right trouble. Because you think, oh, I've got a view, I should use the view, you know, I just won't look down, everything before I won't look... Whoa! And if you are one of those people who do that, right, you suddenly know that and you think, oh, I'm going, I need to move backwards. And there's that moment when you try and move backwards, but you're frozen to the spot. And you think, oh, I tried to move backwards then. I didn't move backwards. There must be a little bit of me that wants to chuck myself over. Well, when you start having a panic about that, you think I'm stupid enough to do it. I'm bloody stupid enough to do it. I'm going to be the only person in history who's trying to move backwards, but they chuck themselves over. And your leg starts doing weird shit, and your body starts doing weird shit, and your face starts doing weird shit. And you think, don't kill yourself, the view wasn't that bloody good. Come on, pull yourself together. And you just about manage to get it together, and you move backwards really, really slowly, like you're the world's shittest Michael Jackson impersonator. And because I can get stressed out, I always think I have to walk a narrow tightrope between boredom and excitement, right? Oh, that's a little too boring for me. I need a little bit more excitement. Hang on. I need to go back a little the other way. Which is why I don't think 8-hour tantric sex is for me. I suspect for a good proportion of that, I'd be bored, and then when it came to the climax, I'd probably have a heart attack. And people go, well, what a way to go. No, I don't think you want to get rigor mortis with your cum face on. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I suspect, if you remember nothing else from tonight's show... Well, because I can get stressed out, I always think if there's a little bit of pampering ever, you know, if it's been offered, well, you know, I deserve it. So let's say you're in a hotel, there's a bit of massage going on, I think, oh, well, I'll have a bit of that. So I treated myself to a little foot massage, right? Yeah, it was a good one. Yeah, it was a good one. A bit too good. I started getting a little reaction downstairs. And I thought, oh, that is inappropriate, isn't it? The thing was, the more inappropriate I thought it was, the bigger it seemed to get. It's that little naughty bit of your brain, isn't it? The bit you struggle to control, you know, the bit where, say, you're at a funeral, somebody farts, you can't help giggling. And the thing was, it was a bloke who was giving the foot massage. I know, it wasn't even a fit bloke, right? So I'm there in my dressing gown, I'm desperately trying to get myself together, you know, trying to calm myself down, trying to think of everything, put myself off, you know, so I'm thinking of Eric Pickles and sharks, traffic accidents, sharks involved in traffic accidents. Turns out those shark traffic accidents, bloody sexy they are. You know, and obviously I'm having a little look at the bloke, see if he can tell that I'm a bit distracted, right? And I don't think he's actually noticed, but I think he can tell that I'm definitely not concentrating fully, mainly because I keep going, shark, shark. So thankfully he eventually puts my feet in the old bucket of water, he goes off to reception, he says, you know, come out when you're ready. He didn't say, I've finished, you can finish yourself off now, right? But, you know, blokes will know that if you do have an embarrassing erection, it's not easy to cover it up, is it? You know, you can stick your hand in your pocket, can't you, right? And stick your bum out a bit, you know. But it seems to usually just look like you've still got an erection, but you shat yourself at the same time. You can actually get these sandals now, right, which have got pressure points on the inside of the sole, right, which massage your feet as you walk along. My friend said he was going to get me a pair for Christmas. I said, don't do that. I walk around town in those, I'm going to get done for indecent behaviour. So the next time I'm at this hotel, right, I think, no foot massage, no foot massage. I will just relax, having a few drinks. So I had a few drinks. During the night, I needed a piss. During this piss, a couple of things entered my consciousness. Seems to be a little colder than I would have thought a hotel bathroom should be. And there appears to be quite a lot of noise, almost like there's an alarm going off. And then gradually I realise I'm not in fact pissing into a toilet bowl, I'm in fact pissing into a bowl full of azaleas. And obviously I rationalise the situation. I think to myself, well, obviously I was in a strange hotel bedroom. I've presumably missed the door to the hotel bathroom, presumably gone out the door into the corridor, maybe one more door like a fire door, sort of thing that could have happened to anybody. But a couple of difficulties are compounding what's going on now. Firstly, I don't tend to wear any clothes in bed. And secondly, I've tried this fire door from the outside and it doesn't appear to want to open. So I am stark bollock naked outside a hotel at 4 o'clock in the morning with no easy way of getting back in, and I'm just starting to panic when I can see coming down the corridor, right, towards me through the fire door, right, there's this security guard. I think this is my chance. Go, hey! I'll put the other hand over my cock. I want him to know I'm not an animal, right? So I'm there going, look, I think I've come out the wrong door. Can you let me back in? So he turns off the fire alarm, he opens the door, he goes, right? And of course then I realise I don't in fact have my key card on me, right? So for no apparent reason I go... So he goes, yeah, all right, I'll let you in. He says, which is your room, right? And he was like, oh. Because I assumed it must be the one next to the fire door, but I wasn't absolutely certain. And I didn't want to go, yeah, this one, him let me in, me walk in, somebody scream, me walk out. Not that one, not that one. So I said, look, I'm not certain. He said, well, if you're not certain, you're going to have to come down to reception with me. I said, can't I stay here? He goes, no. I don't know what he was worried about, you know, whether he thought if he left me in the corridor I was just going to run up and down waving my cock around. I think secretly he was worried I wasn't part of the hotel at all and I'd just turned up naked by the fire door hoping to get lucky. So he goes off to reception, I've got to follow him. So I'm sort of creeping along behind him, right? Like I'm Gollum or something, you know? And we get to reception, we work out he is the one next to the fire door, so he lets me in, he goes off. I put some clothes on and get back into bed. I'm not going to risk it happening again. And it doesn't. So I come down to reception in the morning, but there he is, at reception still, but this time he's talking to a friend of mine. And my friend says to me, oh, did you hear the fire alarm last night? And I went, yeah. He goes, yeah, apparently it was one of our party. I went, oh. And I was trying to work out what had been said, right? When my friend turns to the security guard and goes, do you think you'd recognise who it was, right? And the security guard looks at me and he goes, I'm not sure I'd recognise him with his clothes on. And then just as I'm walking past, but so as nobody else could see, right? The security guard, he leans into me and he goes, gives me a big old wink, right? He says, I don't know if you're into flowers at all, sir, he says, but the azaleas outside looking surprisingly lovely. I just thought that was fantastic. You know, warm, funny, humane. You don't expect that from a security guard, do you? You know, because he could so easily have been a job's worth, couldn't he? When I was outside going, can I come back in? Right? And he was on the warm inside. He could so easily, couldn't he? Have just been there going, I'm not authorised to do that. That is what you want, isn't it? That's what you want, a little bit of humanity from the people in your moments of need. Brilliant example of this, I'm in a supermarket, right? I'm in a hell of a hurry, yeah? The lad on the till knows I'm in a hurry. I've only got about 4 items, right? First 3 go through. The 4th one is a banana, right? It's got a barcode, right? But he's there trying to scan it, right? Doesn't seem to want to scan. I think, oh no, there's a queue of people behind me. He's going to call the supervisor. We're going to be here ages. This is a disaster. To his credit, right? He tried to scan it one more time. It wouldn't scan. He went, bip, himself, and he chucked it through. So, we will be going to a little interval shortly, ladies and gentlemen. That's it, check your watch, sir. Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's time for that now. You are the OCD member we were talking about, aren't you, sir? Going, yeah, well, that's 50 minutes. Oh, that's lovely, that is. He's timed that lovely. Maybe he had a bit of wind and he thought, bloody hell, I need to get out there quickly. That theatre ghost is coming into the front row if he doesn't bloody get a move on. Yes, I have shared with you this half, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe shared a little more than some of you wanted to be shared with. But, you know, that is me. I am accident prone, I do like to relax and I do get easily frustrated, often with myself, as I'm sure you can imagine. You know. Often I'll be walking along the street, I'll suddenly remember something I've done and I think, oh, you twat. And I think I may have said that out loud. Along with all my other difficulties, I'm now going to have to confess to having mild Tourette's as well. And it's at moments like that, I think, do you have any redeeming characteristics whatsoever? And I think to myself, well, you know, I'm not a wasteful person. I don't have, like, 11 cars like Rowan Atkinson's supposed to have. I don't have 8 cars like Jeremy Clarkson's supposed to have. They, in fact, have more cars than I've got pairs of shoes. Because you think, how many cars and how many shoes do you actually need? You know, the people who go, oh, yeah, I need to get myself a lime green pair of shoes to go with lime green jacket, my lime green trousers. And you're thinking, no! You need to get rid of your lime green jacket and your lime green trousers. They're lime green. Oh, I need to get myself a onesie. No, you don't. That sounds like something a dog would do in a park. Do we need a pepper scraper? No, he's only done a onesie. But you know the people, don't you? Oh, I've got to get myself a new car. You only got one last year. I know, but this one, it does 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. I'm thinking if I had a car that did 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, when I reversed out my drive, I'd probably kill somebody. But they go, yeah, but this one, it does 300 miles an hour. You're thinking, does it? Does it really? You'll never know. I once had a Ford Fiesta. It said its top speed was 136 miles an hour. It wasn't. If I'd got it up above about 75, I thought I'd been the victim of an earthquake. And they say, don't they? They go, oh yeah, but look at this then. Look at this, it's diver's watch. This is diver's watch. Yeah, it goes down to a depth of 200 metres, this does. 200 metres. You're thinking 200 metres, that is the depth of the North Sea. If you find yourself at the bottom of the North Sea, you're not diving. Yeah. The ship has sunk, the air bubble is running out, and it's going to be little consolation you know what the time is. But they go, yes. They say, yes, but it's a Rolex, isn't it? It's a bloody Rolex. Do you know how much this one's worth? RRP, 35 grand. And you're thinking, is it really? Well, let me tell you, if I had a watch that was worth 35 grand, I would want some features on that watch. For instance, I'd want to be able to drive it. Because for 35 grand, you can get a Porsche. Yeah. And lo and behold, you open that driver's door. There on the dashboard is a sodding clock. I appear to have got myself all worked up again. I may have to have a little foot massage in the interval. I hope you enjoy yours just as much. See you in a bit. What an interval that was, ladies and gentlemen. A chance maybe for a drink, maybe for a snack, maybe for a wee, maybe for a poo. Please welcome back a man who in fact had all four. A man who also spent the interval having a little sneaky peek into dressing room 1 and was pleased to find out it was shit. So please welcome back a man whose name is apparently an anagram for Randy as porn. Here he is, Andy Parsons. Oh, yeah. Come on, I've had a biscuit. Come on. How was your interval? Was it all right? Yeah, good. Oh, you've got ice cream, haven't you, sir? Hey, little snacks and you're making it last. Making the lady next to you bloody jealous, aren't you? Hey, what else? We all got drinks. Drinks down here. All plastic glasses, though. Hey, they don't trust you, do they? I'm moving backwards anyway, but I... Oh, yeah, Harrogate Theatre, famous for it kicking off in the interval, ladies and gentlemen. So you want to be careful. You want to be careful, because apparently, according to the police, 1 in 20 drinks are now spiked in Britain. Yeah, but I was thinking you could probably use that as an excuse not to go into work the next day. Now, I can't come in, my drink was spiked. How do you know? Well, I had 20 of them. But the police, they're struggling at the moment, haven't they? Because the government have cut their numbers. And the police said, they said if you cut our numbers, crime is going to go up. Now, crime has, in fact, gone down. That's slightly embarrassing for the police, isn't it? Best interpretation of those figures is that police numbers have very little effect on overall crime. The worst interpretation of those figures is, in fact, that the police were responsible for a lot of the crime. Because obviously, you know, some of the police officers have been up to no good, haven't they? They've been taking some money off the tabloid journalists. And of course, the public have been asked, they said, what do you want to happen about this? And the public have said, we want legislation against these journalists. We don't trust the journalists. But they've said they don't actually want MPs to legislate against the journalists because they trust the MPs even less than the journalists. And that's a tragedy, isn't it? Obviously, people don't think MPs tell them the truth that often. And there are times when you think, well, maybe they're justified. Supposedly, the Home Office have a number for how many Romanian immigrants they think are going to come to Britain next year, but they're not going to tell anybody. Instead, they were thinking of advertising within Romania to try and put people off coming to Britain under the slogan, "You won't like it here." and telling them how crap our weather was. And I was thinking, surely a better advert would be to tell the Romanians that within Europe, Britain has the highest rate of sexually transmitted disease, violent crime, obesity, drug use and depression, and then follow it up with a big picture of Jimmy Savile. That should do the trick, shouldn't it? But you think, what a tragedy that politics is regarded as less trustworthy than the profession that hacked the phone of a dead girl. You're thinking, well, who's going to save politics? Various names are bandied around. In Scotland, they talk of Alex Salmond, a man who's obviously very keen that Scotland gets to consume its fair share of UK resources, although he himself appears to have consumed more than his fair share. Current survey suggests 31% of Scottish people want Scotland to leave the United Kingdom. Same survey suggests 41% of English people want Scotland to leave the United Kingdom, which is why ultimately I don't think those Scots will go for independence, right? They'll never want to make that many English people that freaking happy. But more popular than Alex Salmond, Boris Johnson, a man who apparently is desperate to become our next Prime Minister. But what you may not know, he was in fact born in America. So he is eligible to become the next President of the United States of America. And that would be my preferred option. Be fantastic, wouldn't it? The most powerful man in the world, the leader of the free nations, and you just see a picture of a fat scarecrow on a bike. The man is a serial shagger, isn't he? This is the man, right, whose first marriage went tits up because he was having an affair, right? Then he got kicked off the Conservative front bench because he lied about a second affair, and now his current wife actually kicked him out of the matrimonial home for a while because he was having a third affair. And you're thinking, right, Paddy Ashdown, he only had one affair. He got known as Paddy Pantsdown. What are the journalists waiting for, given that Boris's surname is Johnson and his initials are BJ? And people go, oh, well, you've got to love him, haven't you? He's quintessentially British. And I'm thinking, no. He was born in America, he's named after a Russian, and he looks like a Swedish person who's eaten another Swedish person. But people go, oh, well, you know, he wants Cameron's job and the economy's not doing very well. And Cameron's there going, oh, no, we're going to liven up the economy. We're going to get markets involved. This is Cameron's big thing, is he wants to get private firms involved in health. You're thinking, well, who actually sponsored the Olympics? It was McDonald's and Coca-Cola. We don't want them sponsoring our health service. A can of Coke contains 19 spoonfuls of sugar. But you can see it now, can't you? A teaspoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, and we're giving you an extra 8 for free. And of course, the government's very happy with the rail service, aren't they? Because that's franchises, it's markets. Although they've mucked up, haven't they, on the West Coast mainline franchise, because they're going to have to redo that, costing the taxpayer minimum £40 million. And what I didn't realise, we actually subsidise the rail system 4 times as much now that we don't own it as when we did under British Rail. They didn't tell us that when they were privatising it, did they? They didn't go, oh, we're fed up with pumping all this money into British Rail, so what we're going to do is privatise it, and then we can pump even more money in. And not all of that money will go to improving services. Some of it will go to improving Richard Branson, a man who's had so much of your cash, he shouldn't be called Virgin, he should be called Slag. And then we've got Ian Duncan Smith, haven't we, and his welfare reforms. And you're thinking, if you're trying to save money on the welfare budget, surely the easiest and best way of doing that, isn't it, is to actually raise the minimum wage so as the government don't have to pay so many tax credits. Because at the moment, there's a big debate between the parties, isn't there, about a living wage against a minimum wage. Now, it turns out the living wage is in fact the minimum wage that you can live off for your basic needs. So it turns out the minimum wage isn't in fact the minimum wage, it's in fact less than the minimum wage. And you're thinking, well, if it's less than the minimum wage, why is it called the minimum wage? Because if you can't live off it, you might as well do nothing, mightn't you? Would you like a job? Can I live off it? No. Brilliant. When do I start? But now we know from Cameron what his big policy on Europe is. All right? The big policy is going to be this. He is going to go in hard, yes, hard, to Brussels, and he's going to try and claw back loads of powers from Brussels, and when he's done that, he's going to put it to us in a referendum, and he's going to campaign equally hard at that point to stay in Europe. Tony Blair has compared that policy as like sticking a gun to your own head. I would compare that policy as like turning up to a party, threatening to leave the party, shitting on the carpet, and then going, "I'm staying!" Cameron memorably described UKIP as fruitcakes, loonies, and closet racists. And after he described them as such, loads of people went out and voted for UKIP. It also describes a large proportion of the British electorate who were going, "What? There is a party for me!" We discovered at the same time that apparently the average age now of a Conservative Party member is 68. Oh yeah, we have another winter like last year. They're in right bloody trouble, they are. And Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP, he has said that all the other party leaders, they come from the same elitist background. You're thinking this is a man who was a stockbroker who went to public school. Surely if he was really a man of the people, he wouldn't be called Nigel Farage, would he? He'd be called Nigel Farage. Like garage, not garage. But maybe he lives in a village, in a cottage where he enjoys a sausage. I mean, the trouble is, though, people come over here, don't they, and they don't learn how to pronounce our words. It's a bloody outrage. That's what it is. And then we've got Liberal Democrats, haven't we? Liberal Democrats struggling at the moment, down 50% from the general election, aren't they? From 22% popularity down to 11%. Now, I still think people are missing the trick. I think if anybody asks anybody who they're going to vote for in the next general election, everybody should say Liberal Democrat, right? And then when it comes to the general election, nobody should vote for them. And when Nick Clegg goes, "Oh, but you promised us," we can all go, "Yeah, and now you know how we feel." Hey! But he's not the least popular member of the Cabinet. Oh no, the least popular member of the Cabinet, George Osborne. Current popularity, minus 53. You'd have thought 2 was a pretty poor popularity, wouldn't you? Minus 53, that sounds like even imaginary people think he's shit as well. This is the man who went to Brussels to campaign to keep bank bonuses exactly the same as they were before the crisis. And you're thinking if a bank has made a profit, right, they get a bonus. But if a bank has made a loss and we've bailed them out, I don't think they should get a bonus. Because who gets it in the neck from us, right, the public, right, after the banking crisis? It was the people who work as cashiers out front. Now, most of them aren't on much more than minimum wage. So not only do I think the bankers shouldn't get a bonus, right, but I think whoever's made the loss, they should have to work out front, right, as cashier number 4, so as we can have a word with them. And when that tannoy tells us which window to go to, it also tells us what they've done wrong, right? So it says, "Oh, yeah, oh, here we go. Harrogate is on for it, ladies and gentlemen." You know, the tannoy's there going, "He's wasted $3 billion of your cash. Go and tell him what you think of him. Cashier number 2. Let's face it, right? What has actually changed? What has changed since the financial crisis, yeah? What can you put your finger on? Have they actually split up the banks into that retail and investment sides? No. Have they made the banks small enough to fail? No. Have they done anything about bank bonuses? No. The one and only thing you can put your finger on and go, yes, that has changed, right, is the fact that Sir Fred Goodwin is no longer Sir Fred Goodwin. But let's face it, that's made a very little practical difference, isn't it? Because if you ever saw Sir Fred Goodwin, you wouldn't have called him Sir Fred Goodwin, would you? You might have called him a lot of things, but Sir would not have been one of them. In the same way, if you ever came across Lord Sugar, you probably wouldn't call him Lord Sugar, would you? You'd probably call him Sugar, just to annoy him, yeah? And if you had to make him a cup of tea, you might go, "Sugar, sugar," yeah? And if you had to make him a cup of hot lemon, you might go, "Sugar, honey, honey." And you might not get a job on The Apprentice, but it'd be worth it just to see the look on his Sid James face. And then we've got Michael Gove at education. There we go. Popular in Harrogate. I get that every place in the country, it doesn't matter. This is the man. What's his big policy? How is he going to change our kids' education? Rote learning. That's what he thinks. Yeah, he thinks learning by list, that is the way to do it. And you're thinking that is just not an interesting way to learn, is it? You know, I happen to know, right? I happen to know William I, William II, right? Henry I, then we got Stephen, then Henry II, then Richard John, right? Henry III, Edward I, II, III. We got Richard II, haven't we? Henry IV, V, VI, Edward IV, Edward V, Richard III. Then we've got Henry VII, Henry VIII, haven't we? Edward VI. Then we got Mary, and we got Elizabeth, James I, Charles I, Charles II, James II, William and Mary Ann. 4 Georges, haven't we? William IV, Victoria, Edward VII, then we got George V, Edward VIII, George VI, Elizabeth II, and Charles the Unready, right? Now, I happen to know that. It's fucking pointless. I'm a Republican, right? But I reckon a lot of ardent monarchists would struggle to name a lot of those. My guess is that even Prince Harry would struggle to name a lot of those. He probably knows about 3, doesn't he? Probably Henry V because he was a bit of a fighter, Henry VIII because he was a bit of a shagger, and George III because he used to get his kit off for no reason whatsoever. But you're thinking it's not an interesting way to learn anything. Surely more interesting would be if you learned it from Princes in the Tower, right? If you learned it as Battle of Bosworth, yeah, Leicester Car Park, shagger, syphilis, congenital syphilis, Catholic, ginger gay, right? No head, oak tree, the shit, yeah, fell off a horse, 17 pregnancies, German, mad German shagger, pineapple head, yeah, not amused, Lily Langtry, euthanasia, abdication, lisp, husband a racist. If you learn it like that, you know. And of course, the government, they always going, oh, well, there's this left-wing media bias. And you're thinking, well, there's loads of right-wing comics, aren't there? Just so happens at the moment, most of them seem to be investigated by Operation Yewtree. But there's still loads of right-wing columnists. There's absolutely no reason why they couldn't come along to a comedy club and test out their material. And I, for one, I'd love to see it. Oh, I tell you what I hate those race hate preachers, and I hate those jihadists, and I hate those serial killers. But I'll tell you who I really hate, cyclists. Oh, with their smugness and their lycra and those little GoPro cameras on their bloody helmets filming everything. Yeah, they deserve to be knocked off, don't they? Right, I saw one the other day, right? Oh, he had his lycra on, didn't he? And he had this streamlined helmet, and he had those little time trial handlebars. And I thought to myself, he's 20 stone. I don't think that streamlined helmet's doing much bloody good. And what's all this with them slapping the bloody side of your car if they think you're going a bit close with your car? Hey, what happens when we think they're cycling a bit close to our car? Can we lean out and slap their bike? Yeah. And what happens when they're riding on the pavement? Can the pedestrian give them a good old slap round the chops? I think they should be able to, because let's face it, there's loads of examples, isn't there, of cyclists killing pedestrians on pavement. Obviously, I've not bothered to find any, you know. Probably not as many examples as motorists killing cyclists, but I bet most of those bloody deserved it, didn't they? Hey, because they don't keep in, do they? Don't keep into the curb. You take for ages trying to get round them in your car, and you just about get round them, and you think, yeah, I've got round them. Then you come to a bloody traffic light, and they go in front of you all over again. Oh, you think I could give them a nudge, you know? And if they fall off, well, that's their fault, isn't it? They need to get themselves a decent helmet, right? Not one with gaps in, you know? What are they trying to do? Protect every other inch of their head? Yeah. Looks like a bunch of bananas, doesn't it? Where somebody's eating every other banana. Yeah, and if you're really worried about it, get yourself a decent, audible, warning sound, yeah? What sort of nonsense is tingling? Hey? Tingling? Hey, what's good that going to do? You know, in traffic? Tingling? I think you're going to kill me. Tingling? Apparently women are more likely to get knocked off because they don't shout at the motorist. Well, get yourself a decent bell. Tingling, oi! That'd be a better bell, wouldn't it? Maybe one that swears. How about that? Tingling, oi! Fuck off! I would like to see women with a bell like that because I would find it quite sexual. But I want you to remember, I loved Raleigh, yeah? Raleigh, made in Nottingham since 1887, but no longer. Where's it made now? Germany. And what have the Germans ever done for us? I'll tell you what they've done for us. All they've given us, yeah, shepherd's dogs and measles, right? Not you say German measles anymore, can you? You've got to say rubella, haven't you? It's political correctness gone mad. We're going to have to say AIDS next instead of gay plague, hey? 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 Oh. I don't know what this government is coming to. Gay marriage, gay marriage. We could have a lesbian queen. 2 lesbians on the throne. That's more like one of my DVD collection, that is. I tell you. And what's them is he saying that Remainians coming over to Britain is exactly the same as British people going to live in Spain. It's nothing like it, is it? Yeah, because the Remainians coming over to Britain, they're coming here to earn money. Whereas British people going over to Spain, they've earned their money, right? And they're going to go to Spain to try and hide it from the police. Hey! Hey! Anyway, I've had to buy a bike, haven't I? Because I've been banned from driving. So stupid speed signs, you know the ones? You know, if you're going under the speed limit, they give you a smiley face, don't they? But if you're going over the speed limit, they give you a grumpy face. Well, I got the grumpy face, didn't I? So I thought, oh, next time I'm going to go even faster to see if I can make the face cry. And the thing is, well, it's not so much fun driving now anyway, is it? Because you can't drive pissed, can you? Yeah? But you can get a bike and you can be completely off your tits and nobody gives a shit. So that's what I do. I cycle on the pavement, I slap the cars, I don't keep it to the curb. It's bloody brilliant. But the thing is, right wing or left wing, right? Politicians have realised they're not really connecting at the moment, so they're trying to find other ways of connecting with us. So they're trying to tell us little stories about themselves, right? To lure us in. We found out recently that Ed Balls, he likes to watch Antiques Roadshow, which he says makes him cry. And when I heard this, all I could think of, what sort of emotional retard cries at Antiques Roadshow? Then we found out Ed Miliband, apparently he used to be able to do the Rubik's Cube, one-handed in 1 minute 23 seconds, aged 14. And when I heard that, all I could think of, what the hell was the other hand doing? And then we had Nadine Dorries, didn't we? What was she? She wanted to go on I'm a Celebrity because she didn't want to popularise herself, she wanted to popularise politics. But of course she got no politics in the edit because people don't watch I'm a Celebrity for politics, do they? You don't get people going, oh, I'm very interested to find out what Eric Bristow thinks about quantitative easing. But I'm just going to watch him eat a kangaroo penis for a while. George Galloway made the same mistake, didn't he? He went on Celebrity Big Brother, hoping to talk politics. He ended up in a pink leotard doing an impression of a cat. And this is the man who came out in support of Wikipedia's Julian Assange, saying he said he didn't think having sex with somebody when they're asleep, he said that's not rape. He said that is merely bad sexual etiquette. This is the MP for Respect, right? Presumably he doesn't think having sex with a dead person, that's not necrophilia. That's just poor funeral manners. That's right. I was excited to see what Harrogate made of that, ladies and gentlemen. What are you thinking, aren't you? People look at politicians like this and they go, oh, well, they're just fame-obsessed, aren't they? Self-orientated, attention-seeking idiots. But you think, actually, the public expect politicians now to have a certain amount of show business about them. People like a bit of show business. People expect comedy shows to have a big showbiz ending. And to have a big ending, you really need music, don't you? Now, I can't sing, can't dance, can't play a musical instrument. As we've already established, the only thing I'm really good at is sat at the end of my garden doing fuck all. But I figured me coming out with a garden chair having a bit of a snooze was probably not the finale we were all looking for. So I thought, I'll get myself down to one of those recording studios with auto-tune. I will do a version of My Way, right? The bloke who ran the recording studio said, I think, Andy, I need to explain to you how auto-tune works. He said, if you're half a note either side, it averages out, it sounds fantastic. He said, you're not a note either side. He said, you're in a different octave. How about instead of doing a cover version of Frank Sinatra, doing a cover version of Milli Vanilli and getting somebody else to do it for you? So I thought to myself, well, alternatively, why don't we get loads of indoor fireworks? I thought, yeah, we'll have them all against the backdrop, it's going to look brilliant. I checked it out. They said, not only is it a health and safety issue, they said, it's also an insurance issue, but you can use party poppers if you want. I said, you don't get that on the X Factor, do you? You don't get some singer coming out to sing their song and next to them some bloke in a high-vis jacket going pop, 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 pop. People like a bit of show business. I myself, I'm hoping to do a bit of acting. Either that or EastEnders. One of the two. I like to think I've shown my emotional range already tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Anger. Tenderness. Sadness. That's all you need for EastEnders, isn't it? Oi! I love you. Come back. Come back. Oh, I think I could easily be a long-lost Mitchell brother. Obviously, I'd need some sort of, audition monologue, wouldn't I? They tend to use those Shakespearean monologues, don't they? Maybe what I could do, like Henry V, right? But in the style of EastEnders. Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more. Or close the wall up with our English dead. Because even if they are dead, they can always come back at some later stage as a different actor. In peace, nothing does so become a man as modest stillness and humility. But if somebody looks at you a bit funny, burn the place down and claim it back on the insurance. Stiffen the sinews and summon up the blood. And try and shake off the fact you went to Webber Douglas acting school by going, do you want some? Do you bloody want some? Lend the eye a terrible aspect and bare the chest like dear Mum Peggy did in Carry On Camping. Grit the teeth and flare the nostril wide like you've just ruined your septum doing lines of coke with Sister Sam. You noblest Mitchells, dishonour not your mothers and prove that those men that you do claim to be your fathers did truly conceive you by getting on the Jeremy Kyle and having a paternity test. Be a copy to your fellow brethren and show them how to fight the Mitchell way. What are you looking at? Get out of my pub, you muppet. I see you standing there like greyhounds in the slips, straining for the start. Well, the game's afoot. Cry God for Wilford, Queen Vic, and the family. People like a bit of show business, don't they? But it's not just that. They also like the trappings of show business, yeah? People waste an awful lot of money. Things like personalised number plates. You're thinking, no, never get one. Anybody can get a personalised number plate, right? Because you can change your name by depot for a tenner, right? Just change your name to your car registration number. Dear Oxfam, here is a cheque for thousands of pounds I've just saved. Love, C3PO. Similarly, because Simon Cowell did an interview where he said he no longer uses ordinary toilet paper, but he buys designer toilet paper, which is black and costs £10 a roll. There apparently now has been a run on designer toilet paper in Britain, which is black and costs £10 a roll. And you're thinking, not only is that a complete waste of money, but how can you tell if your arse is clean? And if that wasn't enough, Travelodges came out and they said last year 20,000 books were left in Travelodges across Britain, 7,000 of which were the same book, 50 Shades of Grey. And I'm guessing there's probably a few guilty faces in tonight's audience. Probably mainly the ladies. Yes, there we go. One lady going, yes, it's me and I'm proud of it. All 7,000! But you're thinking, of course it's going to be mainly the ladies, because it's not an erotic book for blokes, is it? No pictures. But I myself have read it. I picked up a copy in a Travelodge. No, I had to do it, right, for the Cheltenham Literary Festival. And the story is this: 22-year-old, very good-looking, right, student. Yeah, she's a virgin. She comes across a very good-looking 27-year-old tech billionaire who happens to be into BDSM. And that is BDSM, not BSM, as I read on one website. Right? There is a big difference between bondage, discipline and sadomasochism and the British School of Motoring. You phone up BSM, they come round and you're wearing your nipple clamps. You may not get that driving lesson. But the whole thing seems somewhat unrealistic to me, right? This woman's had no sexual contact whatsoever. In their first contact, right, she orgasms. What does he do, right? He tweaks her nipple, right? That's it, yeah? Now, supposedly, 1 in 3 women, right, struggle to orgasm at all. Most need at least 20 minutes sexual activity. Virtually all need some form of clitoral stimulation. Yeah? But tech boy billionaire, he just thinks, oh, I'll just have a little go. Yeah? I'll just have a little tweak of the nipple. Oh, that's worked. That is a bonus. Yeah? This one's a keeper. Right? I was there thinking, do you know what my favourite line in the entire book is? It goes, he took off his socks individually. Was he going to take his socks off? Oh, he took his socks off simultaneously. Fell on his arse, made a bit of a twat of himself. But we like, don't we? We like to judge how moral everybody else is, but how often do we think how moral actually are we? As an example, right, I recently was involved in a car accident. Well, I say I was involved in a car accident. My car was involved in an accident. I was in fact in bed at the time. My car was parked outside my house, right? 4 o'clock in the morning, right, taxi driver going down my road, a straight road, right, no other vehicles involved, wrote off my car and tried to drive away. And would have done so if my next door neighbour hadn't collared him, right? So next door neighbour knocks on my door, says, you want to come out? Some bloke's just smashed up your car, right? So I come out in my dressing gown, going, what's going on? Right, taxi driver goes, oh, I'm sorry, I was tired. I said, well, I was tired. At which point, right, this young copper turns up and he goes to me, says, whose fault do you think it was? I said, I've been known to snore, but not so loudly somebody's had a crash in the street outside. And you can imagine this was particularly traumatic for me, wasn't it? You know, because there I am in my dressing gown looking at this traffic accident, and all I can think of is sharks and Eric Pickles. And I don't want you to think, right, that I had parked badly. I had parked neatly up against the curb, because you can now get fined if you park more than 50 centimetres away from the curb. Now, I personally don't mind that, because 50 centimetres is almost 2 feet. If you can't park within 2 feet of the curb, you've not parked, have you? You have stopped in traffic and fucked off. But this wasn't the only occasion I had to come across some police officers recently, right? I also came across 5 who were chasing after a young lad for fully 5 minutes, and I was watching them and I was stood still. And you think, how is that possible? Well, they were chasing after this young lad who was so pissed that he was running round in a really big circle. Yet not one of the police officers had the foresight to think, well, if I stand here, I'll be able to get him next time he comes around. They only managed to apprehend him because he was laughing so hard that he collapsed to the floor, at which point the lead copper still rugby tackled him, right, but was in such poor shape he put his back out, right? So he had to let go, at which point the young lad stood up and started doing it all over again. And of course the police, they are supposed to be looking after the politicians, aren't they? But, you know, sometimes you wonder how good a job they do. Nick Clegg, you may have seen, has had dog shit shoved through his letterbox. I'm guessing he wasn't best pleased that the policeman guarding the front of his house didn't do a better job preventing it. Because, you know, you can imagine, can't you? You know, young lad walking up the garden path, right? And the copper's there going, what are you doing? Oh, well, I was just going to shove a dog shit through his letterbox. All right, go ahead. Yeah, no problem. Because there is a lot of abuse out there, isn't there? Ed Miliband, he always gets called Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. And he says, yes, well, you know, if you were going to design a politician, I know it wouldn't look like me. And you're thinking, well, he's probably right, isn't he? He's not helped by that little white patch of hair that he has just here. Makes him look like half man, half badger. And he says what it is, he's actually prematurely ageing, but just in one tiny little bit of his head. And you're thinking, that's a bit weird, isn't it? It's a bit like those people you see who've had Botox on their face, and then you look at their neck, and it looks like a lizard's ball sack, doesn't it? Because there is a lot of abuse out there, isn't there? Especially online. You feel quite sorry for the kids, don't you? Those ones who go to school, get bullied at school, yeah, come home, turn on the computer, get bullied at home. Oh, it's all changed since the days of Gary Partridge, isn't it? Well, I'm guessing most of you don't know who Gary Partridge is. He's a bloke I was at school with. I might have forgotten who Gary Partridge was if it wasn't for one fact, right? And that was the fact, right, that one lunchtime Gary came out a bit too sheepish out of the school toilets, right, having flushed a little too often. So a search party is organised. And it's turned out Gary has done a monster poo, right? Oh, it was a big one, right? It was like the opposite of an iceberg, yeah? 90% of it was out of the water, okay? Oh. And you know they say that childbirth is like pooing a melon? Well, in which case, Gary Partridge had given birth to a pumpkin. Let me tell you that. And the thing was, Gary Partridge only had a very small arse, right? So there was a big debate as to how big his arsehole was in comparison to the rest of his arse, and whether his buttocks were liable to be sucked into an anal void. But this would probably have just been one break time's entertainment if it wasn't for one other fact. And that was the school photography competition was on at the same time. A state school had spent some of its very limited cash on a brand new Polaroid camera. And the idea was you had to borrow that camera, you had to go around school and you had to take a photo of something you thought was amazing. You then had to stick it on the school notice board, right? With a name and what it was. So the poo is stuck on the notice board, Gary Partridge, what I did in my lunch break, right? And there is a song in the charts at the time by Robert Plant called Big Log, OK? So whenever Gary comes into a classroom, everybody starts singing Big Log, and he's no longer called Gary, he's called the Stig, because he is the Stig of the dump, right? And so you can imagine teacher walking along the corridor, has a look at the photographs, sees the poo, he gets taken down, Gary is disqualified from the photography competition. So then half the school go round with a little badge on, Justice for Gary, right? And this is 28 years ago or whatever, right? You're thinking, how would that story have spread now with Facebook, with Twitter, with YouTube? As it was, we had a reunion recently. Gary walks into the pub, the whole pub goes, Stig! And then when he went to the loo, somebody followed him in with an iPhone. And I don't want you to think that I'm immune to abuse. You know, I was recently described as a cross between Ming the Merciless and Robbie the Seal from Pingu. And I thought I had a goatee beard. But according to one young girl, it looks like I have an arrow going up my nose. But you're thinking, with all the abuse out there, right? The more abuse that is heaped on politicians, the more the laughing stock they become, right? The less trusted and respected they are as a profession, the more it seems that comedians think they can become politicians. You may have seen the next spitting image writer stood for Labour at the Eastleigh by-election. There are now elected comedians in Iceland, in Italy, in America. Even Eddie Izzard has said he is going to stand to be the 2020 London mayor. He's obviously seen Boris Johnson. He's thought, fuck it, I must have a chance. People have even suggested that I might want to stand for political office, saying such things as, well, you can't be worse than the current crop. Believe you me, I can. Where is the Secretary of State for Health? Well, he's writing his conference speech, How to Avoid Rigor Mortis with Your Cum Face On. I get easily frustrated, I enjoy relaxing a little too much, and I shout twat at myself in public. But then you think, well, Boris Johnson, he's had countless affairs. He described 250 grand a year as chicken feed, And he tried to take all the credit for the Olympics, although all I can remember him actually doing during the Olympics was going down a zip wire and getting stuck halfway down it. We had invited the best runners in the world to our country, but he couldn't even get from A to B by falling. And the Royal Statistical Society, they've come out recently and they've said they reckon the British public are wrong about virtually everything. They reckon the British public think there's far more crime than there is, far more immigration than there in fact is, far more benefit fraud than there in fact is. You're thinking, if you get comedians as politicians or politicians that look like comedians, the danger is, right, that they're more likely to concentrate on lowest common denominator and populism and not actually do the hard things that need to be done. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Winston Churchill, of course, our greatest ever politician. Now, he used to have a whole bottle of champagne at lunchtime, a whole bottle of champagne in the evening, followed by 3 or 4 scotches, 2 brandies and a highball. I'm surprised after that he didn't say, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the pubs, outside the pubs, at the taxi ranks, in the kebab shop, in the all-night garage waiting for some facts. So what I say to you is, how come we've got to the stage where every time there's a budget, the price of alcohol goes up? I say, for the first time ever, let us reduce in the next budget the price of alcohol. Yeah, I'm not talking 10 pence off a price of beer. I'm not talking 20 pence off a price of beer. I say to you, free beer available on the NHS with free pizza, because as we all know, it helps prevent cancer. Yeah. But I don't want you to think that I've forgotten the health of this nation. I say we make sure that supermarkets, they have to make those trolleys harder to push to give us a good cardiovascular workout, and we make sure the biscuit aisle is only a foot wide so fat people can't get down it. And I say to you, let's make sure we get a day off when the Queen dies, yeah, when Prince Philip dies, when Charles dies, when Andrew dies, when Edward dies. That way, if when they all come out onto the royal balcony and it happens to collapse, we'll get a week in the sun. Yeah? And let's double the defence budget, right? We have recently just spent £8 billion, right, on 2 aircraft carriers which apparently will not be able to carry any aircraft for the next 7 years. So one has been mothballed, and for the next 7 years, right, the other one, as it goes up and down the seas, probably the most dangerous thing it may have on it is a seagull, right? Oh, yeah, we won't be able to attack anybody, but if anybody comes within 100 yards with a bag of chips, oh, they're in trouble. And let's not forget kiddie fiddlers, ladies and gentlemen. I say to you, we round up all the kiddie fiddlers, right? We put them in the same town, just them, right? And we make them all wear school uniform, so as when they wander around, they're a constant danger to each other. And I say, let's bring back capital punishment, right? For Fred Goodwin, for the bloke from the Go Compare adverts, for Jimmy Savile. I don't care if he's dead, I say dig him up, hang him, bloody bury him again. And let's not forget George Osborne, right? This is the man who was part of the Bullingdon Club, yeah? And apparently when he was part of the Bullingdon Club, they used to drop him repeatedly on his head, holding him by his ankles, going, who are you? And they would keep doing it until he said, I am a despicable cunt. Now, if they can do it, why can't we? I say we reenact it every Wednesday on Westminster Green until this economy improves. But I realise I need a good ending to the speech, because this is the only thing that is liable to make it onto the news. And you all know when I have reached the end of my speech, because I will gesticulate wildly and then do a silly wave. And I will gradually get there by building up, by pumping my fist a bit, by using short sentences and gradually raising my voice as I get towards the end of the line. And it's at that point I throw in my final feel-good policy. I say we make sure BBC One at 10 p.m, instead of having the news, they have 10 minutes of free porn. You have a look at the 2010 UKIP manifesto, right? It's not a million miles away from that. I suspect we do not want comedians as politicians. That way, you suspect, can only lead to Greece. A country, right, which was described by the European Central Bank. They said it's a bit like the Ebola virus. They said, we may have to cut off our leg to survive. Now, I'm not convinced they know much about finance. They certainly know nothing about the Ebola virus. That affects your entire body, right? You cut off your leg, you've still got the Ebola virus, you've just got one less leg. But virtually every country you look at in the world, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is increasing, right? And you think that can't be right. But you're thinking if we all went out, right, on a regular basis and demonstrated, yeah, things can change. But I also know I am a big fan of a nice warm room, yeah, comfy armchair, bit of a natter, which is why my favourite form of protest is the sit-in. Because it's trying to change the world by doing fuck all. Because let's face it, even if you retreat to your shed, right, politics will always intrude. The height you can have that shed, what you can see from that shed, who's fracking underneath your shed. At some stage, we need to go out and go the extra mile.
For what is a man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows and did it my way.
Yes, I did it my way. Well, thank you very much. I wanted to stop you before you used all of your clapping up. I will be going when I get my breath back. And I didn't want to go off to nothing, you know. You know, because I know what some British audiences are like. They go, oh, I've clapped once, fuck him. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, we see each other again at some point. Who knows, if you talk very loudly on your mobile on a train, I might follow you home. And I mean, if you fancy getting in touch, that'd be lovely. You know, a bit of Facebook or a bit of Twitter or a bit of MySpace. If you're trapped in 2007. And if you are online, ladies and gentlemen, you know, there's a new campaign called My Theatre Matters. And, you know, obviously it'd be interesting to see how that edits with somebody sneezing in the middle of My Theatre Matters. People going, I didn't even see his lips move. That was bloody brilliant, that was. I'd love to, wish I could see the person in front of him. If there was indeed anybody going, what the fuck? But yes, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, having been to the theatre tonight, you now know that you can crack one off quite happily in a Harrogate corridor. Nobody will give too much of a monkeys. And if nothing else, you now know that when you see Simon Cowell being nasty on the telly, you can console yourself with the fact that he's probably got a dirty arse. So, safe home. You know, if you are going home driving tonight, show a bit of humanity, perhaps. Certainly if you're driving down a straight road, late at night, you're feeling a bit tired. Maybe hand over to your co-passenger, you know. Certainly don't see them falling asleep and think, oh, fuck me, there's a good idea. But it is nice, isn't it? It's nice. It's nice doing nothing, isn't it? It's lovely. But it's not really as good, maybe, as doing something that you're actually proud of, is it? You know, maybe something like this. Practice at home, ladies and gentlemen. Impress your partner. And if that doesn't work, tweak the nipple. Thank you very much. Good night.